Hi, my name is Luke Shepard. I'm a senior at Lower Marion High School, and today I will be presenting Charles Blaskowitz's map of the Philadelphia campaign. The map is officially titled A Plan of the Progress of the Royal Army from their landing at Elk Ferry to Philadelphia in 1777. This would have been under the command of His Excellency Sir William Howe, Knight of the Most Honorable Order of the Bath, Commander-in-Chief, but the map would have been surveyed and drawn by order of Major General Sir William Erskine, by Charles Blaskowitz, who would have been commander of the Corps of Guides. So Blaskowitz would have already completed maps of Rhode Island and New York, which provides a very helpful starting point for the context behind this map. From September to November of 1776, the British Army would gain full control of the city of New York, forcing Washington and the Continental Army to retreat out of the city. Moving into 1777, the British planned for General John Burgoyne to march south from Canada to attack upstate New York, and there were initial plans for General William Howe to join General John Burgoyne by moving up northward from New York. However, Howe had different plans. Howe thought that by taking the city of Philadelphia, he would be able to demoralize the American cause, and that he would be able to draw Washington out into the open and gain a swift victory in the war. Another reason behind taking Philadelphia was that the Continental Congress would have been located inside of the city, which would have led to more demoralization for the Americans. So in the summer of 1777, Howe was going to send a flotilla of ships down the Jersey shore. And while the most direct path to attack Philadelphia would be to scale up the Delaware River, there were many defenses that would have made this difficult. Further to the south, there would have been Fort Billingsport on the New Jersey side, although this is not indicated on the map. There would have been Fort Mercer near Red Bank, New Jersey, Fort Mifflin on Mud Island. The map also indicates that there were sandbanks in the water, and also chevaux de frise, which is a 18th century naval obstacle, sort of a long wooden plank with spikes in it that would have been designed to poke holes and eventually sink ships. So instead, Howe's army is going to sail further southward up the Chesapeake Bay, and they're going to land at Elk Ferry on August 25th, or head of Elk. From this point, the map is going to indicate Howe's path northward, as well as Lieutenant General Wilhelm von Kniphausen, who was a Hessian general. But beyond their paths, the map does indicate much of the topography as they moved along, which is another helpful way to follow the path of the British Army, instead of just following these red lines. The map also indicates the Schuylkill River, the Delaware River, the Chesapeake Bay, the Susquehanna. It notes many of the major creeks that feed into these rivers. It mentions many houses and churches. There are even trees placed on the map at times. So it is a very detailed rendition of not only Philadelphia, but the general area, about 40 miles or so to either side. After the British land at Elk Ferry, Washington is going to receive intelligence of the whereabouts of the British Army, and him and some officers are going to move southward. And there was actually an interaction, or not quite an interaction, but Washington will be on top of Iron Hill, further to the south in this region, and General Howe is going to be on top of Gray's Hill nearby, and they're actually going to gain sight of each other in late August of 1777. Following this sort of interaction between the two, Washington's going to direct General William Maxwell to lead an advance corps of soldiers to assault British forces on September 3rd. The map indicates the skirmish at Couch's Mill from September 3rd to September 8th, in which an advance corps of rebels under the command of Maxwell are driven back. This battle wasn't meant as a full, all-scale, all weapons out way of driving the British out of the city of Philadelphia or the general region, but more as a way to assault and aggravate British forces and gain some intelligence on their whereabouts. An interesting fact is that future Supreme Court Justice John Marshall would have fought at this battle. Moving northward, the next site where General Wilhelm von Kniphausen and General Howe meet is Kennett Square, and this would have been prior to the Battle of the Brandywine. Washington was preparing for a major battle at Brandywine. The Battle of the Brandywine would end up being the second largest set battle of the Revolutionary War, with about 30,000 men in total. The Battle of Long Island was largest with about 40,000 men. And Washington was preparing and anticipating that the British would move from the south into the east and attack from Chad's Ford. So he stationed many of his forces and and men and artillery in this region. However, General Howe discovers two fords further to the north, Trimble's Ford and Jeffrey's Ford. So as Washington is located in this region, he meets the Hessian soldiers at Kniphausen to the south and to the east, but General Howe and General Cornwallis as well are able to pinch Washington's forces by attacking from the north. This forces Washington to retreat towards Chester before eventually crossing to the other side of the Schuylkill River, and the British Army is going to remain, as it indicates on the map, at the Dilworthstown Tavern from the 11th of September to the 16th of September. They used the Dilworthstown Tavern as a hospital and a jail, but they also caused much destruction in this region, leading to a lot of animosity from the nearby Quakers. Around the 14th of September, Washington's going to cross back to the other side of the Schuylkill River, near the modern-day site of Green Lane in Manayunk, which would be around this general region right here. And he's going to march through Chester County along Lancaster Road. When Howe receives intelligence regarding the whereabouts of Washington, he's going to move his army northward from the Dilworthstown Tavern up towards Whitehorse, Pennsylvania. And on the 16th of September, both sides are going to meet in what they anticipate will be one of the largest battles of the Revolutionary War. However, as they're preparing to fight, a massive downpour ensues, forcing both sides to retreat. This is indicated on the map with the skirmish on the 16th of September, but it is better known as the Battle of the Clouds. This is technically considered a draw or a tie, but I like to consider it a loss for both sides. They each would have lost an incredible amount of supplies, which is going to actually force Washington to cross back to the other side of the Schuylkill River once again and move northward towards Reading. Reading was an incredibly important site for Washington, as this held a massive, truly large amount of Continental Army supplies. But he does leave behind General Anthony Wayne and men to watch and monitor the progress of the British Army. So with General Anthony Wayne left in Chester County, which is actually where Anthony Wayne is from, the map indicates Anthony Wayne's estate in this area further to the south, and at the Ballymingel Gallery in King of Prussia for Arader Galleries, there is a map completed by General Anthony Wayne of Chester County prior to the Revolutionary War. It actually was a land survey done for a real estate deal. While General Anthony Wayne was monitoring the progress of the British Army, on the night of September 20th, or the morning of the 21st of September, he's going to be surprised by an attack from the British, led by General Charles Grey. General Charles Grey would have led a bayonet attack on General Anthony Wayne's men. The purpose behind the bayonet attack was so that if Wayne led a counteroffensive with musket fire, the British would be able to easily identify and pinpoint that location and dedicate more resources to that area. And this is going to be truly devastating for the Americans. That is the Paoli Massacre. They lose about 50 of their men die, and there are 200 more casualties. But there are going to be much more far-reaching impacts for the rest of the war. Anytime General Anthony Wayne led any men into battle, the British would be in fear that Anthony Wayne's men would never surrender, due to rumors circulating that the British kept slaying American soldiers even after the Americans had surrendered. Following this, on the 21st of September, the British Army is going to continue their path northward towards Valley Forge. This is indicated on the map as just the Forge, but the British Army, with Howe, are going to stay there from the 21st to the 23rd of September. Just a few days prior, General Wilhelm von Kniphausen would have led a group of Hessians into this area as they received intelligence regarding continental supplies located in this region. General Washington would have sent his generals Hamilton and Lee in order to try to protect these supplies, but they were ultimately unsuccessful. All that remains is a local mill so that the population there can support themselves. But it's another, not devastating, but unfortunate blow for the American Army. Once here from the 21st to the 23rd of September, Howe's going to set his sights on crossing to the other side of the Schuylkill River. Initially, he planned to do this much earlier, but as I mentioned, on the 16th of September, the massive downpour at the Battle of the Clouds led to the Schuylkill River being too high to cross. So, on the 23rd of September, Howe was going to devise a plan to cross the Schuylkill River by sending several diversionary attacks northward towards Reading. As I mentioned, this site was incredibly important to Washington and the Continental Army, so when they see these diversionary attacks moving northward towards their supplies, Washington draws his army further to the north opening up the opportunity for the British to cross at the modern-day Fatland Ford, or Fatland Road, which is indicated on the map as Flat Ford. Once they crossed to the other side of the Schuylkill River on the 25th of September, General Knyphausen and General Howe are going to march down Germantown and Pikes Avenues into the heart of Germantown. So after General Howe and the British Army move into Germantown on the 25th of September, General Cornwallis is going to lead many British soldiers and grenadiers into the heart of the city of Philadelphia on the 26th of September. In occupying the city, they meet relatively little to no resistance at all, as many of the residents that remained were loyalists or neutral towards the war effort. And once in the city of Philadelphia, the British are going to begin construction of 10 redoubt forts further to the north to offer themselves protection. About 3,000 men would have been located in the lower part of the city of Philadelphia, with 9,000 men being further to the north in Germantown under the command of William Howe. Washington and his men would have been camping near the Perkiomen Creek, near Pennypacker Mills, and they're going to see this as an opportune time to attack Howe's forces. Washington marches through Germantown. He actually splits his forces in effort to lead a surprise attack on the British, but on the morning of October 4th when they attack, a dense amount of fog leads to disorganization and also delays some of their attacks, ruining part of the element of surprise. One example is about 120 British soldiers positioned themselves inside of the Benjamin Chew House, also known as Cliveden, and Washington dedicates an incredible amount of resources and artillery towards trying to take this house, but in the process, the Continental Army mounts a high amount of casualties, and this goes very unsuccessful. Washington and his men are forced to retreat after the Battle of Germantown back to the Pennypacker Mills. General Howe he might have been able to pursue them and end the revolutionary cause by capturing Washington, but he was much more concerned about taking 2 forts further to the south, in Fort Mercer near Red Bank, New Jersey, and Fort Mifflin on Mud Island. On October 2nd, which would be prior to the Battle of Germantown on October 4th, the British would have gained control of Fort Billingsport, which is not shown on the map, but was another very important fort or port along the way along the Delaware River. On October 21st, Hessian commander Karl von Donop is going to cross the Delaware River with Hessian soldiers, and they're going to land near Camden, New Jersey. And after a brief skirmish with Continental Army forces, they set up camp for the night in Haddonfield, New Jersey. The following day, on the morning of October 22nd, they're going to lead an attack on Fort Mercer. Von Donop was very confident of his ability to take this fort. He famously proclaimed that either that shall be Fort Donop or I shall be dead. And as the Hessian soldiers mount their attack on Fort Mercer, it grows very unsuccessful. The initial plan was for the British to have an attack from both the sea and from the land by British naval ships bombarding Fort Mercer. However, a sandbank gets in their way, and they are unsuccessful in leading that bombardment on Fort Mercer. Furthermore, as the Hessians approached Fort Mercer, there was an abatis, which is it was sort of a obstacle in the sense of it would have had a lot of shrubs with wires and other thorns, and the Hessians did not expect this, and so they did not have the proper tools to cut through these defenses. Karl von Donop is going to be injured in his attacks, and he is taken off the battlefield. He will pass away the next day. And arguably the most embarrassing part of this attack is that the British lose one of their most important ships and another very important ship. They lose the HMS Merlin and the HMS Augusta. The Augusta would have been incredibly expensive and taken a massive amount of resources in order to build. A few weeks later, from November 10th to November 15th, the British naval ships are going to lead a bombardment on Fort Mifflin near Mud Island, and this bombardment will ultimately be successful as they're able to take the fort. While they're able to take the fort, the Continental Army troops that were stationed there are able to escape to Fort Mercer across the river, which is rather embarrassing for the British that they would allow this escape to occur. And on November 18th, just a few days later, when General Charles Cornwallis approaches Fort Mercer, they they discovered that the fort has been abandoned. So ultimately, the British are able to take both of these forts, but they were not very efficient in taking these two. None of these details are actually shown on the map, and this likely would have been an attempt by Blaskowitz to protect Howe's image. He would have already submitted his letter of resignation in about late September. In May of the following year, he would be recalled back to Britain. And had they discovered information regarding the failed attempts in taking Fort Mercer and the difficulties in taking Fort Mifflin, he could have faced a court-martial, and his popularity with the officers led them to try to have some effort towards protecting this image of his. A few weeks prior, on November 2nd, Washington would have moved his forces into the rebel camp, which is indicated to the north here, which is the camp at White Marsh. The most major battle or skirmish that happens while Washington is located in White Marsh is the Battle of White Marsh, the skirmish at White Marsh on December 4th. Howe is going to make one final attempt to draw Washington out into the open to defeat him before winter sets in. But as the British are preparing to attack, a Quaker housewife by the name of Lydia de Roch is able to notify American forces of the oncoming British attack. So while Howe and his men are able to push back or push through American lines at times, the attack proves unsuccessful in fully defeating the American force, forcing them to move back down towards Germantown and Philadelphia. Following the skirmish at White Marsh on December 4th, Washington is going to make plans to move into Chester County to set up his winter camp. Chester County would have been very advantageous, as it would have been within reach of Reading, where many of his supplies were. It would have still been close to the city of Philadelphia, but it also would have been near Lancaster. Lancaster was another important site, as it was where the Continental Congress had moved to, although they would later move towards York, Pennsylvania, and Lancaster, Pennsylvania would have also held many Continental Army supplies. So, as Washington prepares to move into Chester County, his first attempt across will be at Matson's Ford on December 11th, but as they build a pontoon bridge and attempt to cross the Schuylkill River, they run into General Cornwallis, the British Army, and his forces, which leads to a brief skirmish on December 11th. The Continental Army is going to destroy the bridge that they briefly created to prevent Cornwallis and his men from crossing to the other side, and they are forced to cross the next day further to the north at Swedesford instead. The ultimate and famous winter camp for the Continental Army is to the north in Valley Forge, but as they cross at Swedesford, instead of taking the left, or the right rather, to move up towards Valley Forge, they take the left and station themselves in Gulf Mills for about 6 days. Once the Continental Army moves into Gulf Mills, they stay at a farm on Poplar's Lane, and George Washington would have actually stayed in what was then known as Poplar's Lane, but is now known as the Ballygall Gallery, which is where I'm currently standing. They stay here from December 13th to December 19th before moving northward towards Valley Forge. The map actually indicates much of the topography around Valley Forge in great detail from when the British were in this region earlier in September. But in terms of dating the map, no mention at all is made of the camp at Valley Forge. There's no mention of the camp at Gulf Mills prior to that, nor the skirmish at Matson's Ford. However, it does mention that there is foraging on the 22nd of December, further to the south. So the earliest that this map could have been made was the 22nd of December, and the latest that this map was likely made was January 8th, as there is correspondence between General Howe and General Washington, which confirms the Continental Army's location in Valley Forge, leading to an approximate date around late December or early January from 1777 through 1778. This map does not include any later details, such as General Howe's departure from the city of Philadelphia in May of 1778. It makes no mention of the British Army moving northward through New Jersey in June of 1778. This map really truly does focus on solely the Philadelphia campaign. It would have, of course, been drawn and created by Blaskowitz under the command of, or under the order of General William Erskine. And it would have been used in many meetings with General William Howe. The map would remain in the collection of the Erskine family following the Revolutionary War, but this map is truly special in its uniqueness. It is one of the only original American maps that depicts the Philadelphia campaign, not only depicts it, but shows such great details with all of the topography shown, all of the battles labeled, all of the churches, all of the creeks. It is truly a wonderful and unique map.